I'm going to show you everything you need to know to succeed as a beginner in Season 4 of Dragonflight for Shadow Priests. For the stat priority, I just want you to focus mainly getting a higher and higher eye level on your gear and therefore more and more intellect. As you can see, there's an overall idea here for secondary stats. However, this can change from person to person depending on the gear that you have and isn't set in stone, nor is it one size fits all. So although this is a good guide for secondary stats, I don't want you as a beginner to go too deep into this. You can, of course, if you want, but I would advise simulating your character if you want to do that. And if you're not sure what that means or how to do it, and you do want to, then just come on over to our Discord where I or someone else from our lovely community can help you out. And I have got actually written guides in there showing how to do that. For the talent trees, this on the left is for single target and more raiding, and the one on the right here is for AoE and a more Mythic Plus build. The actual rotation of these talent trees is going to be quite similar, however there is obviously some core changes between them. And I'm not going to go through every individual talent, as so not to overwhelm you with information, but we are going to talk through in the rotation part all of the core and important ones that you need to know about to succeed. Before we have a look at that rotation though, let's have a look at the cooldowns and utilities we have at our disposal. Starting off at the top here with Desperate Heal, this is quite simply a heal that is going to heal you, the caster, for a moderate amount when you're in danger. We then have Dispersion on the bottom left here, which is also going to reduce your damage taken heavily and also heal you. You will disperse into a cloud of smoke, meaning you can't really do anything while in this form. However, it's a really good defensive we have. Up top then, on Power Infusion, we want to use this on an ally, and it's actually going to grant us speed. So the reason we want to use this on an ally is because of this talent here, Twins of the Sun Priestess. Power Infusion also grants an ally 100% of the effect when cast on them and onto you as well, meaning then that when you cast this on an ally, both you and the ally will get the full effect, whereas, of course, when you only cast it on yourself, only you will get the effect. And therefore, by casting on an ally, both of you are going to benefit, rather than one person. We then have Dark Ascension. Now, we're not actually taking this talent, but I want to make you aware of it because it is one that you can choose to choose instead. This is going to increase all non-periodic damage by 25%. And Shadow Priests are a really interesting spec that does a lot of damage based off of periodic damage. We have quite a few dots or damage over time spells, and I would say it's quite a chaotic specialization where we've got loads of shadowy apparitions flying out and we're using dots and tendrils coming out of the ground. It's really, really cool. And lastly, we have Mindbender. This is another talent choice that you can take if you wish, that's going to summon a Mindbender to attack your target. We also have some really useful utilities in our arsenal. Master Spell, a very famous one, where you can dispel in a large area rather than just dispelling one person's effect. So actually everyone within that area will be dispelled. Leap of Faith is going to pull a friendly target to you, and you can use this to take them out of fire or other bad situations. Levitate, again, making the target levitate. No brainer, I know, but this will of course stop any fall damage. So if you need to jump off a cliff or something like that, you can do this and slowly levitate down as a slow fall effect. And this can be used on yourself and allies. Angelic Feather will place a feather that grants movement speed to you or any ally that walks over it. There is a really good macro that I use where it will automatically place the feather at your feet, and I'll put that down in the description for you in case you want it. I find it very useful myself. And now, of course, onto the actual rotation. So a few things I want to talk about first. One is the UI and one is our mastery. Our mastery is that our damage is increased by X amount for each of our Shadow Word Pain, Vampiric Touch and Devouring Plague on the target. During Void form, all targets receive the maximum effect. Basically then, we have 3 spells down here, Vampiric Touch, Shadow Word Pain and Devouring Plague, and these are our main dots or damage over time, and we want to keep these 3 up as much as possible on our target. Regarding the UI, you may see that mine might look very different to yours. This is because I use something called ElvUI, and it's a custom-built profile I've made, including some other mods as well. If you would like it, you can join my Patreon, and I can help you install it, etc. That is something I offer. And you also can get some spreadsheets and other resources as well if you wish, and of course it supports the channel. There's also this in the middle here. This is a weak aura up by Luxfoss. It just shows all of your resources and cooldowns in one central location on the screen, and I find that can be really helpful so that it's not as chaotic when raiding and doing Mythic Plus. So what spells do we actually have then? Well, we've already spoken about Vampiric Touch, and when we use it, you're actually going to see that it's also put on the target Shadow Word Pain as well. When we use Shadow when we use Vampiric Touch, it is going to put both of those on there. So although I've put Shadow Word Pain on the action bar here, you don't really need to use it because you're just going to use your Vampiric Touch to keep Shadow Word Pain up. But we do want to keep both of these dots up at all times as our number one priority. So Vampiric Touch, a touch of darkness that causes Shadow Word damage over 21 seconds and heals you for some of the damage dealt. If it's dispelled, the dispeller flees in horror for 3 seconds. And you'll see there that it grants 4 insanity. And we can see here our insanity is slowly ticking down. That is our main resource. The main spender of that insanity is going to be Devouring Plague. You can see it costs 55 insanity here and I can't use it. That's our main spender. We want to keep that up at all times as well. We've then got our Shadow Fiend on a 3-minute cooldown, generates 2 insanity every time it attacks, and it's going to summon a Shadowy Fiend to attack the target, as you can see there. And then we have Void Eruption. Releases an explosive blast of pure void energy, activating Void Form and causing damage to all enemies within 10 yards. During Void Form, this ability is replaced by Void Bolt. And then casting Devouring Plague increases the duration of it. So that Devouring Plague spell I just spoke about, when we cast that in the Void form, and you'll see here, now we're in Void form, that's going to transform it into Void Bolt, use that as a priority, and also your Devouring Plague. But using Devouring Plague will actually extend the duration of our Void form, and that is something we want to try and stay in for as long as possible. So just to recap so far then, we're going to keep up our Vampiric Touch and Shadow Word Pain dots. We're going to use our Shadow Fiend on cooldown, and we're going to use our Void Eruption pretty much on cooldown. Then we're going to use our Power Infusion. Remember to use that on an ally. Then we're going to spend any Devouring Plague that we can. If the target is at 20% health or below, then we're going to use Shadow Word Death. It's a dark binding that inflicts damage to your target. If the target is not killed, we take backlash damage. Damage increased by 250% to targets below 20% health, and this generates insanity as well. Then we have Mind Blast. Blasts the target's mind for a certain amount of damage, generates 6 insanity. We're going to use this next on our priority. Then we're going to use Void Torrent. Channel a torrent of void energy into the target, dealing damage over 3 seconds, and that generates a lot of insanity. And then you can see you've got a few other spells here, and this is getting kind of to the lower end of the priority list now. We have Mind Flay, however we're only going to use this when it's actually transformed into another spell. And then we have Mind Games and Divine Star. These two are your basically bottom of the list priority. Mind Games assaults the enemy's mind, dealing shadow damage and briefly reversing their perception of reality. For 7 seconds, the next amount of damage they deal will heal the target, and the next amount of healing they do will damage the target. And then we have Divine Star. Basically, as you can see there, it sends out like a boomerang doing damage to your enemy, and also healing to any allies in its path. We have this talent here, Death Speaker. Your Shadow Word Pain damage has a chance to reset the cooldown on Shadow Word Death, increase its damage, and deal damage as if it's striking a target below 20% health. And you'll see that your Shadow Word Death will light up like this. So whenever it lights up, always do use it. It's still going to be at the same point in the priority list at this point here, but when it does light up, don't worry about waiting until they're under 20% health, because it will actually act as if it is. You can also see that our Mind Blast has lit up here as well, and that is from the talent here, Shadowy Insight. Shadow Word Pain's periodic damage also has a chance to reset the remaining cooldown on Mind Blast and cause it to be instant. And again, we want to use that at this point in the rotation. Now remember I said that your Mind Flay will sometimes be changed into a different type of spell. That is going to be every time you use 2 Devouring Plague. So I've just used one just then, and then when we use the second one, you'll see here that your Mind Flay is now Mind Flay Insanity. We only want to use Mind Flay at that point in the rotation when it is that. Otherwise, after you've used all of these, we can then use Mind Flay as our very last filler. So that's the normal Mind Flay. To recap then on this whole priority rotation, we're going to keep up Vampiric Touch and Shadow Word Pain on our targets, and this is for single target and AoE. The only real difference in the rotation is that when we're doing Mythic plus an AoE, we just try and keep Vampiric Touch up on all targets if possible. We then use our Shadow Fiend, and we use our Void Eruption, and then use our Void Bolts when we can. We use our Power Infusion, and then keep up Devouring Plague on as many adds as we can. We use our Shadow Word Death if it's procced, or when the enemy is below 20% health. We try not to cap on Mind Blast charges, including making sure we're using our instant ones. We're then going to use our Void Torrent. Every second cast of Devouring Plague will transform our Mind Flay Insanity. We're going to use that at that point. Then we're going to use our Mind Games, and lastly our Divine Star. Outside of that, use your Mind Flay as the last filler. And that is it for the rotation. One thing I will say is that around this part of the rotation, the priority, if you want to get more advanced, can get a lot more nuanced than I've explained, but this is the beginner rotation that I think you should start off with and practice with until you get really comfortable with that. You're still going to do absolutely fine with this rotation, and it is correct. Just be aware that, if you do want to get to a lot higher levels, what the priority on these things can really kind of move around a little bit more towards the end of the rotation. But if you stick with this, you're going to be absolutely fine, especially as a beginner. Regarding the set pieces for this season, by the way, this is all already worked into the rotation and it's all passive. So you don't need to worry about that as a beginner either. This rotation is already baked into that. As I said before, the AoE build will change a little bit, as you can see here. And the main spell and only real change we're going to make is Shadow Crash here. Hurls a bolt of slow-moving shadow energy at the destination, and Shadow Crash applies Vampiric Touch to up to 8 targets it damages. That's the only real time we're going to change the rotation. So we can use our Shadow Crash here. You can see this big volley going out, and then everything hit is going to be hit with Vampiric Touch. So when I'm saying that your top priority in AoE is just to get Vampiric Touch up on everyone, Shadow Crash is the best way to do it. A few other little things. This little button down here, Silence, this is our interrupt or kick as a Shadow Priest for interrupting spellcasting. Just know you've got that one there. We've got a Master Spell, remember, which we can place and dispel everything in that area. It's not instant like your other dispel, but it is going to dispel everything in that area. And don't also forget about your power word Fortitude for buffing your allies. And of course, stay in shadow form at all times, assuming a shadow form, increasing your spell damage by 10%. That's another core thing we must be doing as a Shadow Priest. But that's it, guys, for Season 4 of Shadow Priest. That's going to get you going. Hope it's really fun. If you've got any more questions at all, feel free to join the Discord or join my Patreon and I can help you out. And of course, if you are looking for other PvE guides or PvP or dungeon guides for Season 4, click this playlist here because I've done them all for you.